This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Shiur. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Beis. Amar Rav Huna. Haragil b'ner. Someone who trains himself, someone who accustoms himself to light the ner. Rashi says it's also referring to ner Chanukah. Havyin le banim talmidei chachamim. We'll have children who are Torah scholars. That's what the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos. If you're careful to light ner Chanukah, you will have children, you'll have sons who are talmidei chachamim. Very interesting statement of the Gemara. That's a pretty big promise, a pretty big haftacha, that if you're careful in ner Chanukah, you'll have banim talmidei chachamim. And I'm pretty confident in saying that we're about to feature for the first time a Maramakim that we have never featured before. That's because I simply was not even aware that this sefer existed. It's a sefer from one of the Rishonim. And the sefer I do not think is printed by itself. But in the back of the memorial book, the Sefer HaZikaron for Rav Hutner, in the back of that sefer, there's a little sefer that's published from manuscript form from the son of the Ravid. His name was Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben HaRavid. And Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben HaRavid wrote a 5-page sefer. And the name of his sefer is Kuntris Soid Hadlakas Neiros Chanukah. Kuntris, it's a little booklet, a pamphlet, about the secret of lighting the Chanukah candle. And Rabbeinu Yitzchak, the son of the Ravid, asked the question that we all dare to ask, or we dare not to ask. We're all thinking the question, but we would never bring ourselves to ask that question. And Rabbeinu Yitzchak asked the question. And asked Rabbeinu Yitzchak. You can take a look on your sheet of number 2. Masha Kasav Chazal Hazahir b'ner Chanukah Havin le banim zacharim sheyu talmidei chachamim. Frek, the son of the Ravid asks, Hare kule alma madlikin neiros Chanukah. Everyone lights neiros Chanukah. Which Jew doesn't light neiros Chanukah? But not every person, not every Jew has children. And even those who have children don't necessarily have sons. And even those who have sons, not everyone, not even most people could make the claim they have banim talmidei chachamim. Ein kulam v'loy ruban zoichim lebanim zacharim sheyu talmidei chachamim. So that's a pretty strong question on the Gemara. The Gemara asks, the Gemara says that if you're careful to light ner Chanukah, you're going to have children, sons, talmidei chachamim, and yet look around. Do most people have banim talmidei chachamim? Says the son of the Ravid, this is not a question. You know why? Because if the Gemara tells us this, then it's true. Every word of the Chachamim is true. Says the son of the Ravid, Ukefi ma shekol ha'olam madlikin neres Chanukah, sheruba deruba yotzim midei chavasim. Yes, most people light ner Chanukah, and most people get it right. It's not like people are not getting it right. It's not like people are buying those candles that don't last 30 minutes, or they're lighting it 20 amos up in the air. Most people are getting the mitzvah right. Says Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben HaRavid, Avo miyuta de miyuta zehirin lahadle kefi kol pirtei hamitzvos hadiktukim. Most people are not lighting according to all the specific details of the mitzvah. But if you're careful to fulfill every detail of ner Chanukah, you could take it to the bank. You're going to have banim talmidei chachamim. But why? Sorry, we don't have a chance for the interaction. But what's the answer to the question? The question is, not everybody has banim talmidei chachamim. Everybody lights ner Chanukah. What's the answer? Not everyone fulfills all the details. There are many details. First of all, you have to use the right oil. You have to have the right kind of wicks. You have to have the right kind of menorah. You have to make sure it's not too high. You have to make sure, l'chatchila, the menorah is supposed to be below 10 tfachim. Now most people, 99% of people, do not put their menorah below 10 tfachim. So what do? 10 tfachim is pretty low. 10 tfachim, right? 10 tfachim. We rely on the fact that if it's a choice between the lower than 10 tfachim or putting it by the window, it's better to put it by the window where people outside could see. But if you're not putting it by the window, or if you're living in an apartment building very high up anyway, where nobody could see it anyway, then you're supposed to put it below. Okay. So that is the statement of Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben HaRavid. Why are people not zoicha to banim talmidei chachamim? Yes, they're yotzei the mitzvah. They're doing the mitzvah pretty well, but not perfectly. if you were to do the mitzvah perfectly, you would have children Tamei Chacham. By the way, you should know, having children Tamei Chacham means not only will you become a Talmid Chacham, you'll even have children who are Tamei Chachamim. So we could ask even more. If the Gemara is saying that anyone who lights Ner Chanukah properly, they will become a Talmid Chacham, we're hoping that you're going to become a Talmid Chacham, Naftali, right? But most people are not becoming Talmid Chachamim by lighting the Ner Chanukah. Why not? So what Rabbeinu Yitzchak is saying is, most people are not really doing the mitzvah perfectly. Now, by the way, who is this Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Aravid? What do we know about him? We know a few things about him. We know the Chidah in the Shem HaGdolim. The Chidah gives us.
You didn't have cell phone, huh?
What?
You didn't have cell phone.
No. We know that Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Aravid, first of all, the Chidah tells us, was a Sagi Nahar. He was blind. Number 2, says the Chidah, V'nigla elav Eliyahu zachal atayv. He had Gilui Eliyahu. Right? Again, he's not a Tana, he's not an Amoira, he's a Rishain. Chidah writes he had Gilui Eliyahu Hanavi. And number 3, he was the Rebbe of Rabbeinu Ezra and Rabbeinu Azriel. Who are they? The Rabbeim of the Ramban. So again, Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Aravid was a pretty big person. Right? The son of the Ravid, the Rebbe of the Ramban. He had Gilui Eliyahu Hanavi. And he's telling us that if only we would fulfill Ner Chanukah perfectly, we would all have Banim Tamei Chacham. Okay. So this year I got my hands on a new sefer, a beautiful sefer. It's called Yarach L'Mayadim, from the Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, Rabbi Rucham Olshan. And he asks, well, wait a second. That means Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Haravid is saying that if you were to light the menorah perfectly, with every hiddur and every chumrah and every small detail, you would be Zoicha to Banim Tamei Chachamim. Says Rabbi Rucham, I am privileged to see thousands and thousands of B'nai Torah, B'nai Aliyah. And they're all lighting the menorah perfectly. They learn the Mishnah Berurah. Every detail in the Mishnah Berurah is being fulfilled without exception. Is every Ben Torah, Yirei Shamayim, Zoicha to have children, sons, Tamei Chachamim? No. So what's Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Haravid saying? That if only we would be fulfill the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah perfectly, we would be Zoicha. A lot of B'nai Torah fulfill the mitzvah perfectly. They have the expensive oil, the most beautiful menorah. They know exactly where to put the menorah. Not too high, not too low. They have the perfect wicks. They light it exactly between 25 and 30 minutes after Shkia, according to Rav Aaron Kotler. And if you want to go like Rav Moshe, between 13 and 18 minutes after Shkia. Whatever it is, whoever your paisik is, they are not lacking in even the most minor detail.
If he was blind, was he mechuyev?
He's not saying that what he does. He's just, that's his observation. Him blind, he saw more than we see with our eyes, right? But that's the question of Yerucham. In other words, what do you mean? The reason why people are not Zoicha to Banim Tamei Chacham is because they're not fulfilling all the details? I'll find you 10,000 people, 100,000 Jews who are lighting Ner Chanukah with every small detail, and yet, very rare to find someone to be Zoicha to Banim Tamei Chachamim. The Alter of Kelm, Simcha Zisel, he makes a shocking statement. Look at number 5. It says the Alter of Kelm, Ani, right? This is a personal statement. Very, very personal information he gives us. Ani u'kayoytze bi b'nei gili. I and all of my friends, like kiyamnu miyamenu mitzvahs Chanukah. We have never fulfilled the mitzvah of Chanukah. What's he meant? What exactly didn't he do? You get in the mail from Telz Yeshiva the box of candles, right? You get the matches and you light it. What's the problem? What was he missing? He didn't have the candles. He didn't have the matches. What didn't he have? What didn't he fulfill? And he's saying, not only me, but anybody that I know. So he was one of the Gedolei Hadar. So not only is he incriminating himself, he's basically incriminating all the Gedolei Yisrael of his time. Nobody fulfills Ner Chanukah properly. That's a pretty heavy statement. What does he mean? What is he trying to say? Then the Rambam takes us even further. We know we have 248 mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa. Yeah? Blowing the shofar, lulav and esrog, talis, tefillin, sukkah, daled minim. The Rambam does not comment on any mitzvah in the Torah that, this mitzvah is a very beloved mitzvah. This is a great mitzvah. You ever hear, did the Rambam ever say, the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein, what a wonderful mitzvah. The Rambam doesn't say, the Rambam just says, do it. And yet when it comes to the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, says the Rambam, Hilchos Chanukah, Perek Dalet, Halacha Yudbeis, mitzvahs, Ner Chanukah, mitzvah, chaviva, it's a beloved mitzvah. So already, if we were ranking the mitzvahs in the Torah, you have 248, and they're all basically the same. And then there's mitzvahs Chanukah, which is beloved. And then the Rambam says, Ad Moed, very, very much. Very, very much. What? It's only D'Rabbanan. It's only rabbinic. The other mitzvahs are Midaraisa. What does the Rambam mean? That mitzvahs Chanukah is Chaviva Hi Moed. Hi Ad Moed. And then the Rambam goes further. What's the halacha? Chas v'shem, if somebody is very poor, do they have to sell their shoes or their pants or their shirt to buy daled minim? No. Do they have to sell their clothing to buy lulav and esrog, to buy a tefillin? No. You have to sell your clothing to buy a shofar? Absolutely not. You have to sell your hat, your belt to buy a matzah? No. You don't have to sell your clothing to do mitzvahs. There is a mitzvah you have to sell your clothing for. Ner Chanukah. If you don't have enough money to purchase Ner Chanukah, you have to sell your clothing. Sell your clothing. What's so special about Ner Chanukah? What's this whole to do about Ner Chanukah? Why do we make such a big deal about it? Ask Reb Simcha Zisel. Look, he says, what's the big deal with Ner Chanukah? We know Gadol Kavod Abriyos Shadoicha Loisasei Shabbatayra. God cares very much about human dignity, not if it comes to Ner Chanukah. Ner Chanukah, sell all your belongings to buy Ner Chanukah. If you're a storekeeper and you light a fire, now you're working in a store, you're smoking something, you throw it outside, and it causes damage, you got to pay for your damage. If you light a fire outside, if you light a candle one night outside the store, and the fire gets knocked over, you have to pay for damages. But if for Ner Chanukah, we exempt you. If you light your Ner Chanukah outside, even in a close proximity to the public thoroughfare, you're exempt from damages. Because the Chachamim felt that Ner Chanukah is so important, we don't want you to have to pay for the repercussions of your act. You're exempt. What's so special about Ner Chanukah? Not only that, you got to sell your clothing. You're exempt from damages. The Rambam says it's mitzvah chaviva ad ma'od. Ask Reb Simcha Zisel in the last line of number 7. Ma kol hacharada hazois. What's the big deal? You light the candle. You don't light the candle. What's the big deal? It's a bigger deal than tefillin, talis, shofar. What's the big deal? Okay. So we have to see the well-known Gemara, the famous Gemara, in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Chafal from Abayz. The Gemara tells us exactly what Chanukah is all about. Says the Gemara, what happened on Chanukah? On the 4th line in number 8, Shenichnasu Yevanim laheichal, when the Greeks entered the Heichal, Timu kol hashmanim shebeheichal. They defiled all the oil. Uchshegavra malchus beis Chashmonai, and when the Chashmonaim prevailed, right? You ever go on a tour in Israel and you're like half asleep, right? And the tour guide is talking and no one's paying attention. And that over there, that's from the Hasmonean dynasty, right? Whatever, right? Those are the Chashmonam. So when the Chashmonam prevailed, V'natzcham, Badku, they searched, V'leimatza ala pachechad shel shemen, they found one jug of oil, Shaya munach b'chaysam shel Kohen Gadol. That jug of oil was sealed with the signet of the Kohen Gadol. Everybody knows the story. There was only enough oil to last for one day. Nasa b'nes, a miracle happened. V'hedliku mimenu shmona yamim, and it lasted for 8 days. Okay, now pay very close attention. L'shana acheres, the next year, kavum v'asayim yamim tovim. They made Chanukah a Yom Tiv. Now, if you have a pen, make a line under the next 2 words. What is Chanukah? What's the Yom Tif of Chanukah? Behalel u'v'hoida. Halel and hoida. So now, let's understand. The Gemara is saying, what's the definition of Chanukah? Are you allowed to do malacha on Chanukah? Of course, right? You drove here, you could write. You're allowed to do malacha. So how is Chanukah a Yom Tiv? So the Gemara says, Hallel and Hoidah. What's the Hallel? What's Hallel? Pshuta kimashmai, very simple. Everybody knows on Chanukah, you say the whole Hallel. You don't need explanation for what Hallel is. V'Hoidah. And they establish Chanukah for Hoidah. What is Hoidah? Thanksgiving, right? Okay. What is Hoidah? What is Hoidah? Says Rashi, Ela likrois Hallel. Take a look. I magnified the Rashi 220 times. Okay, look at number 9. Ela likrois Hallel. To read Hallel. That's what Hallel means. Hallel means to say Hallel. And what's Hoidah? Veloimar al hanisim b'Hoidah. To say al hanisim in the bracha of Hoidah and the bracha of Moedim. So if I were to ask you, what is the definition of Chanukah? The definition is to say Hallel, and according to Rashi, Hoidah, to say al hanisim. That's the definition of Chanukah. Chanukah, there's no Isser to do malacha. How is Chanukah Yom Tiv? Hallel and al hanisim. So we have over here on the sheet a very important ha'ara from the Sefer Kuntra Shiur Halacha from one of the Poskim in Lakewood of Shmuel Felder. A very beautiful ha'ara. Imagine, what's the halacha if you forget to say al hanisim? Do you have to repeat Shemona Esrei? No. So we all think, al hanisim is not that important. Because anyway, if you miss it, you don't have to daven over. Says Reb Shmuel Felder, you know what you see from Rashi? What's the definition of Chanukah? Saying Hallel and saying al hanisim. So if you have a guy who said Hallel and missed al hanisim, he doesn't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. But he missed Chanukah. He didn't have Chanukah this year. He didn't have Chanukah. The same way, imagine someone who didn't hear Megillah on Purim. It's not a Purim. It's not a Purim if you don't hear the Megillah. You don't give the Shachman. It's not a Purim. So the same way, what is Chanukah according to Rashi? Hallel, you say Hallel. So if you don't make it to shul, you got to say Hallel. You better say Hallel. If you don't have Hallel, it's not Chanukah. It's just a regular weekday. Chanukah is a Yom Tif only in terms of Hallel and al hanisim. So even though if you miss it, you don't have to repeat over Shemona Esrei. You missed Chanukah. So you see a very big chiddush from Rashi. What is Chanukah? Hallel, say Hallel. Hoidah, say al hanisim. Fine. And it's quite remarkable. Just imagine for a moment you were the Rambam, and you were writing about all the things that you need to do on Chanukah. The Rambam, you know what the Rambam says you need to do on Chanukah? Take a look at number 12. The Rambam says, because of the miracle, Hiskinu Chachamim Shaboisei Hadar, the Chachamim enacted, Sheyu Shmainas Hayomim Ha'elu, that these 8 days, which begin from the 25th day of Kislev, Yemei Simcha, they're days of Simcha. Now we could give a whole shiur. Where did the Rambam get Chanukah Yemei Simcha? The Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says Hallel and Hoidah. Where did the Rambam get that Chanukah is the day of Simcha? There's no obligation to eat meat on Chanukah or to drink wine. What does the Rambam mean Chanukah is Yemei Simcha? Okay. What else is Chanukah? The Hallel, and to say Hallel. Umalikim Hananeiros, and you light Ner Chanukah. The Rambam doesn't mention one word about saying al hanisim. Isn't that strange? Rashi learns the definition of Chanukah is to say Hallel, and the Hoidah, how do you thank Hashem? Al hanisim. And the Rambam, who's supposed to be telling me what I need to know what to do on Chanukah, he says, you better say Hallel, you better light the candles. He doesn't say a word about al hanisim. What happened to al hanisim? Does anybody know where the Rambam says that you have to say al hanisim in Shemona Esrei? The Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, in the halachos of Shemona Esrei, in the halachos of whenever you have a special day of the year. So we know on Rosh Chodesh you say Ya'alav Yavai. On Pesach you say Ya'alav Yavai. On Shavuos you say Ya'alav Yavai Zman Matan Torasenu. On Sukkot you say Zman Simchasenu. So the Rambam says on Chanukah you say al hanisim. But in Hilchos Chanukah, listen carefully to what we're saying. In Hilchos Chanukah the Rambam doesn't say a word about al hanisim. In Hilchos Shemona Esrei the Rambam says to say al hanisim. You know what that implies? You know what that tells us? That according to the Rambam, the only reason you say Al Anisim is because whenever you say a Shemona Esrei, the Shemona Esrei has to be relevant to the day you're davening. So whenever you have a special day on the calendar, you have to mention that day in the Shemona Esrei. On Rosh Chodesh, you have to mention Ya'aleh V'Yavai. If a guy doesn't say Ya'aleh V'Yavai in Rosh Chodesh, he didn't miss Rosh Chodesh. The reason you have to say Ya'aleh V'Yavai in Rosh Chodesh, it's not that Rosh Chodesh obligates you to say Ya'aleh V'Yavai, it's Shemona Esrei obligates you to say Ya'aleh V'Yavai on Rosh Chodesh. You hear the distinction? Most inserts that you make into Shemona Esrei, it's not because the day obligates you. The definition of that day is to mention it in Shemona Esrei. No one would say the definition, right, if I were to ask you, what's the definition of Pesach? To say Chag HaMatzah Hazeh and Ya'aleh V'Yavai? Of course not. The definition of Pesach is eat your matzah. It happens to be, if you're going to bother davening Shemona Esrei, you better mention the fact that it's Pesach. But the insert of Chag HaMatzah is not because on the definition of Pesach is you have to mention Pesach and Shemona Esrei. Rashi clearly learns that when Chazal enacted Chanukah, they enacted it Hallel to say Hallel and Hoidah to say Al Anisim. But the Rambam clearly holds that saying Al Anisim on Chanukah is not a critical part of the Yom Tif. It's just something you have to do if you're going to daven Shemona Esrei on Yom Tif. And all the Achronim point this out. Rav Betzalel Zolti in the Mishnah Yavitz. And you have here on the sheet number 14, the Sefer Kuntres Chanukah Megillah, where they're medayek. The fact the Rambam omits Al Anisim in Hilchos Chanukah implies Al Anisim is not one of the fundamental aspects of Chanukah. No! Maybe Hallel is a fundamental aspect. Rashi holds Al Anisim is a definition of the day. The Rambam doesn't say a word about Al Anisim. So now we have to ask ourselves the following question. If the Rambam does not hold Al Anisim is a critical part of Chanukah, so how does the Rambam read the Gemara? The Gemara says, what's my Chanukah? They establish Chanukah Hallel, so that the Rambam agrees to. The Rambam says you have to say Hallel. He makes a big deal about the Hallel. And then the Rambam says, and then the Gemara says, V'hoidah, you have to thank Hashem. How does the Rambam read the Gemara when the Gemara says Chanukah is hoidah? How does the Rambam read that word? Rashi says it's referring to Al Anisim, but the Rambam doesn't bring down the halach of Al Anisim. So how does the Rambam understand the Gemara's statement Hallel v'hoidah?
The Rambam said that in Hilchos Chanukah. He says, "B'sheva chayil v'hodaya lo Al Anisim."
Yeah, but he doesn't. Yeah, beautiful. But he doesn't say Al Anisim. The Rambam doesn't mention a word about Al Anisim. So if he doesn't hold of Al Anisim, if Al Anisim is not the fulfillment of hoidah, what is the fulfillment of hoidah according to the Rambam? I'll ask you another question. Okay, best question you ever heard in your life, or at least today. Okay, listen to this question. The Gemara says, look at number 8. Look back in the Gemara. The Gemara says, L'shana acheres, the next year, Kavum, they established Chanukah, V'asam Yomim Tovim, and they made Chanukah Yom Tif, Hallel, Hoidah. So what's Chanukah? Two things. To say Hallel, that we're good with. Rashi and the Rambam, everyone agrees you have to say Hallel. Hoidah, we know what Rashi holds. Hoidah is Al Anisim. Anybody have any questions on that? The Gemara left out the main mitzvah of Chanukah. What's the main mitzvah of Chanukah? Lighting the menorah. Guess how many words the Gemara says about lighting the menorah on Chanukah? 0. The Gemara does not say that Chazal made a mitzvah of lighting the menorah on Chanukah. Why not? Al Anisim, Rashi says it did. Hoidah.
That's all.
No. Hallel itself a hoidah?
No, Hallel is Hallel. It's a different thing. But I have a very simple question. If the main mitzvah of Chanukah is lighting Neiros Chanukah, why does the Gemara omit it entirely? That's a good question, no?
Yeah, because
that's the question. That's the question of the Re'im. Rabbi Yom Mizrahi. Rabbi Yom Mizrahi wrote footnotes on the Smag. Look at number 22. And all the way at the end. All the way at the end. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. Look in number 17, excuse me. Just joking. Look at number 17. All the way at the end. V'ayin b'chidushei hara'im. Look in the Chidushim of Rabbi Yom Mizrachi, al Asmag, Hilchos Chanukah, Shetama. He asked the following question. Lama lehiskiroi. Why does the Gemara mention Rak, Halel, and Hoida? V'loi hadlokas ner Chanukah shua ikar. Why does the Gemara omit the main mitzvah of Chanukah? What are we going to do with that? It's like a Pirchashin of Tshuva. The Gemara is telling us what you have to do on Chanukah, and the Gemara says, Halel, Haida. Halel, say Halel. Haida, according to Rashi, is what? Alanisim. What is it according to the Rambam? We have absolutely no idea. But why does the Gemara completely omit Hadlokas Ner Chanukah? And I'll ask you another question. Look how the Rambam copies over the Gemara. Back in number 12. Right, if you were a matik, if you were copying over the words of the Gemara and you were writing what's Chanukah, so you would write Chanukah is Halel, Haida. Look at the Rambam. The Rambam says, look at number 12. Hilchos Chanukah, Perek Gimel, Halacha Gimel, second line. Yimei Simcha, Halel, Umadlikin Bahen Haneros. The Rambam omits Haida, and instead of Haida, the Rambam puts in the mitzvah the Gemara forgot about. The Rambam puts in the mitzvah of Madlikin Bahen Neros. So isn't that strange? The Gemara says Halel, Haida, and omits lighting Ner Chanukah, and the Rambam writes Halel, Ner Chanukah, and he omits Haida. So there's some, either that we have, right, something ran in Denmark over here. What's going on? Why would the Gemara omit the main mitzvah of Chanukah? Why would the Rambam omit the word Haida from the Gemara? So what do we have to say? Just a brief musical interlude. So what do we have to say? What do we have to say? What we have to say is, take a look at number 18. One of the Rishonim, Masechta Shabbos, the Piskei Riaz. Piskei Riaz writes, L'shana acheres, the next year, Kavum v'yasam shmona yamim, they made 8 days of Chanukah. What do we do on Chanukah? Shegoimrim bohen es halal. You finish Halal. So far, so good, right? The Gemara says Halal. The Rambam says Halal. The Piskei Riaz says Halal. Everything wonderful. But our question is, why does the Gemara omit lighting Neros? And why does the Rambam omit Haida? Says Riaz, Umoidim al hanes v'hadlakas haneros. That's the clue. Says Riaz, what is the mitzvah of lighting Ner Chanukah? The mitzvah of lighting Ner Chanukah is we thank Hashem for the miracle by lighting the Ner Chanukah. Ner Chanukah is different than any other mitzvah in the Torah. Every other mitzvah is you do the mitzvah. Why? Kach, Gozrani, Habari, that's what God decreed. Ner Chanukah is an expression of Haida. Rashi learns Haida is Alanisim. The Rambam obviously points out, the Mishnah Se'ayvitz points out Reb Zolti, that if the Gemara doesn't say a word about Ner Chanukah, and the Rambam doesn't say a word about Haida, so you could be guaranteed, the Rambam, when he says Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, he's explaining what Haida means. He argues on Rashi. Rashi learns Haida is Alanisim. The Rambam says, no, Haida is not Alanisim. The thanksgiving of Chanukah, how do you express thanks? Not by saying the words Alanisim, by lighting the Ner Chanukah. That is the expression of Haida. That is a very beautiful, clear, glad pshat in what the Rambam is saying. The Gemara omits the main mitzvah. No, you know what the answer is? The Gemara is not omitting Ner Chanukah. When the Gemara says Halal, it refers to the mitzvah of Halal. When the Gemara says Haida, it refers to the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah. The Rambam, okay, Rashi, that's a good question. What is Rashi, according to Rashi, what do you do with the fact that Gemara omits Ner Chanukah? So if you want an answer to that, look in the Chidushim of Rabbi Yeshua Milakutna. Or you could buy the CD. It's called The Eternal Menorah, if there are any left. Okay, but that's a good kasha. What's Rashi into that? But says Reb Zolti, what is the Rambam? What is the Rambam omits Haida? The Gemara omits Ner Chanukah. The answer is nobody's leaving anything out. The Rambam, by saying Umadlikin by Neros, is explaining the establishment of Haidah of Chanukah. So Rashi says, Hallel ala Nisim. Rambam says, Hallel hadlakas ner Chanukah. Beautiful pshat. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the exact same pshat as Rab Zolti, like we mentioned as the Piskei Riyaz. That it's clear from the Rambam, the fact that the Rambam omits Haidah, and the fact that Gemara omits ner Chanukah, the Rambam obviously is explaining. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, look at number 20 in the Shalsei Tshuvos Mincha Shloimeh, Chelek Beis Siman Nun Daled. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, it is clear from the song that we sing, from the Pizmain, Hanerois Halalu, that this is definitely the pshat in the Rambam. What do we say? We say Hanerois Halalu, Anach Madlikin, Ala Nizman Avos. Ein Lanu Reshus L'Hishtamish Bem. We're not allowed to use the Ner Chanukah. You can't use it to read. You can't use it to see. All you could do is look at it. Ela l'roisam bavad. Why do we light Ner Chanukah? Kedei l'haidos. As clear as day. The reason we light Ner Chanukah is that is the expression of thanks to Hashem. Kedei l'haidos u'lahalo. So says Reb Zolti, but let's just think for one added minute. You ready for this? Why would the Gemara say the mitzvah of Chanukah is Haidah? Why wouldn't the Gemara say clear, straight out, you have to light candles on Chanukah? Why would the Gemara speak in this veiled term? You know what you have to do on Chanukah? You have to thank Hashem, and now we have to have a Rambam who comes and explains what does Haidah mean, lighting the candles. Why wouldn't the Gemara say straight, the mitzvah of Chanukah is lighting the candles? You ready for this? Says Reb Zolti, the Gemara is teaching me a big chiddush. That if you go ahead and you light the Ner Chanukah, and you just think, I'm doing a mitzvah, you're not yotzei the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. You know why? Because the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is, Ribbono Shel Olam, I thank you for the miracle, and this is how I thank you. I light the candle. If you don't think that you're thanking Hashem, and the expression of thanks is by lighting the candle, says Rab Zolti, you're not yotzei Ner Chanukah. We hold that mitzvahs don't necessarily need kavanah. As long as you do the mitzvah, it's self-evident that you're doing it for the mitzvah. Says Rab Zolti, that's by every other mitzvah in the Torah except for Ner Chanukah. But when it comes to Ner Chanukah, if you just light the candle, and you're thinking, this is a wonderful mitzvah, and you're thinking, I love this mitzvah, and you're thinking, Ribbono Shel Olam, thank you for giving me. No, you're not yotzei the mitzvah until you think, I'm lighting the Ner Chanukah as an expression of thanks to Hashem. That's a big chiddush.
Is that by every night?
Yeah. No, only the first 8 nights of Chanukah. After that, no more kavanah, right? So that's the chiddush of Reb Zolti. That why does the Gemara say Haidah and not straight out you have to light Ner Chanukah? You know why? To teach me a tremendous chiddush lahalacha, that if you fulfill the mitzvah and you have big kavanas, you're mechavin in the meaning of the Yud Kei Vav Kei b'ksivasa and all the kavanas ha'arizah, and you have in mind this kavana, that kavana, and your eyes are all in the back of your head, and you're up in the shamayim. The only problem is you are not yotzei the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Why? Because you didn't think that lighting Ner Chanukah is an expression of thanks. What does Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach write about this? He agrees lahalacha, but he says it a little bit more moderately. He says if someone lights Ner Chanukah and he doesn't think this is an expression of Haidah, he's not yotzei the mitzvah b'shleimus. That's a little bit, But Reb Zolti writes, if you don't have this kavanah, you're not yotzei the mitzvah. And Rav Shlomo Zalman takes it further. You ready for this? Everybody knows, what if you can't make it home one night? What if, you have an all-nighter at work, you can't make it home? So your wife is allowed to light for you at home. Fine. L'chachila, right? Your wife could light for you. But, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, if your wife lights for you, but if you're not having the thought of Haidah to Hashem, technically you're yotzei, but you don't really get the mitzvah. And then he says further, when you light Ner Chanukah in shul, you make a bracha. Why do you make a bracha? Because it's a minhag. You don't make a bracha on every single minhag. Not every 99% of minhagim you don't make a bracha on. Does anybody know one minhag you do make a bracha on besides Ner Chanukah? Hallel. Hallel on Rosh Chodesh is a minhag. It's one of the only minhagim you make a bracha on. So ask Rav Shlomo Zalman, why would you make a bracha on the minhag of Ner Chanukah? You know what the answer is? Because it's the only other minhag which is like Hallel, it's Haidah. That's what Rav Shlomo Zalman says. So we're learning not only a beautiful idea, but also an important idea la halacha. And that is that thanking Hashem through the Ner Chanukah is not just a nice thing to do, it's the Iker Mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. When the Gemara says they establish Chanukah for Hallel and for Haidah, according to the Rambam, that means to say Hallel and to thank Hashem through the vehicle of lighting Ner Chanukah. Says Rabbi Yerucham Olshan, Shlita. Many people could be lighting Ner Chanukah and they're buying the most expensive oil and the most beautiful menorah and the most mahudar dika wicks, and they're putting it exactly in the right place at exactly the right time. But if people's hearts are not inflamed with thanksgiving to the Rebbeinu Shalom, if they're not thinking that my lighting the menorah is an expression of thanks, they're not fulfilling the mitzvah b'shlei musa. This is not just an added beautification of the mitzvah. This is a fundamental aspect of Ner Chanukah. Ner Chanukah is different than any other mitzvah in the Torah. You don't eat matzah as an expression of thanksgiving to Hashem. You ate matzah because Hashem told you to. Yes, whenever you do a mitzvah, it's always a form of gratitude. But we don't have any mitzvah in the Torah which is specifically formulated as an expression of gratitude. According to the Rambam, we do. We have one mitzvah. Ner Chanukah is an unspoken form of the expression of thanksgiving to Hashem. And if we were to say today, if we were to ask today, what is the job of a Jew in this world? So you say, to learn, to daven, to put on talis, tefillin. Yeah, of course. But an overarching principle, if we were to say, what is the main mission of a Jew in this world? So David HaMelech says, you say, Ta'iv, what is good in this world? L'haidais Hashem, to thank Hashem. You want to know what's good in this world? Is food good? There's only one good thing. If David HaMelech says Ta'iv, he's saying this is good, nothing else is good. So what is it? L'haidais Hashem, to thank Hashem. That is what is truly good in this world. The Ramban tells us, take a look at number 26. The Ramban says that Chazal tell us that a person should be careful in a small mitzvah like a great mitzvah. Why should a person be careful in a small mitzvah like a great mitzvah? Says Ramban, Shekulan chamudais v'chavivais ma'ay. They are all very beloved. Why are they so beloved? Because every mitzvah is in effect shebechosha adam moide behem leikav. Because any time you do a mitzvah, you are in effect acknowledging and thanking Hashem. Says Ramban, v'kavanas kol ha-mitzvahs. The purpose of all 613 mitzvahs are, okay, we're about to say something very important. What is the purpose of all 613? Number one, shenamin be'elokeinu, to believe in Hashem, v'noida elav shehu baranu, and to thank Him that He created us. The purpose of mitzvahs in the Torah is to thank Hashem. Hashem, you put me here on this world, thank you. I put on talis, I'm saying thank you. I put on tefillin, I'm saying thank you. I'm blowing shofar, I'm saying thank you. Berachas Hamazon, I'm saying thank you. I'm learning Torah, I'm saying thank you. Says Ramban, not only is it the purpose of all the mitzvahs, vihi kavanas hayitzira, that's the purpose of creation. In other words, what does God want from us? What does Hashem want from us? That we should put on tefillin? Yeah, but more. That we should learn Torah? Yeah, but more. There's a principle that God is looking to squeeze out of us, more than anything else. Says Ramban, what does Rebbeinu Shalom want from us? She'ein lanu tam achar b'yitzira harishayna. There is no other reason for creation. other than to thank Hashem. There is no other purpose in mitzvahs, there is no other purpose in creation than to thank Hashem, that He created us. So while every mitzvah is very beloved in the eyes of Hashem, it is an indirect way of thanking Him. We're thanking Him because Hashem told us to do a specific mitzvah, so we acknowledge Hashem wants us to do this, and we know Hashem does everything for us, so we do the mitzvah as a form of thanksgiving. But there's only one mitzvah that we have that is a direct expression of thanks to Hashem. That the way we thank Hashem is expressed through the performance of the mitzvah. And according to the Rambam, that mitzvah is Ner Chanukah. So if we were to ask, what act do we do in this world that most directly fulfills the purpose of mitzvahs and the purpose of all of creation? The answer is Hadlakas Ner Chanukah. The act of lighting Ner Chanukah is an unspoken expression of thanks to Hashem, which the Ramban tells us is the purpose of everything. The purpose, the reason we're here, the reason Hashem created us, the reason Hashem gave us mitzvahs, is that we should thank Him. And while all the mitzvahs are an expression of thanks, Ner Chanukah was enacted as the most direct, open, explicit expression of thanks to Hashem. And that is why, says Rabbi Moshe, of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, the Rambam says, mitzvahs Ner Chanukah, mitzvah chaviva hi ad ma'od. Of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, the most beloved mitzvah doesn't mean it's the most important on a halachic sense, but in terms of fulfilling the fundamental objective of creation, Ner Chanukah is the most beloved mitzvah that we have. And that is why, yes, many people perform Ner Chanukah, but not everybody is zoicha to the mitzvah, to the skula of haragil b'ner havin leibanim tamid chachamim. Because this achievement, this accomplishment of being able to express Haidah to Hashem has infinite levels. But one thing we could say for sure is that if a person is able to bring out the latent, natural feelings of thanksgiving that are already in our hearts, because every Jew naturally has feelings of tremendous gratitude to Ribono Shel Olam. Just a matter of bringing it forth. It's a matter of expressing it. It's a matter of being in touch with it. But if a person is able to bring forth his feelings of thanks to Hashem through the vehicle of lighting Ner Chanukah, we should all be zoicha to haragil b'ner havin leibanim tamidei chachamim. Zoicha to a freilich in Chanukah. Thank you everyone for coming, and thanks for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.